We've been talking to customers throughout the weekend here at IATA about the U.S. trade policies. We think we've got about a $500 million residual cost challenge.
GE confirming just now it is cutting 12,000 jobs as it shrinks its power.
The sound of machines that once powered American progress is fading, and with an era that shaped entire communities. General Electric, a company long regarded as a cornerstone of U.S. industry, has announced it will close factories across the country and shift production overseas. What began as a policy designed to protect American jobs is unraveling into consequences few anticipated. Tariffs meant to shield domestic industries have instead triggered ripple effects threatening to hollow out the very foundation of manufacturing. As one of America's most iconic companies retreats, larger questions emerge. Is this simply a strategic adjustment to survive in an unforgiving global market? Or does it mark the beginning of a slow collapse of the nation's industrial backbone? The quiet hum that once filled factory floors across the Midwest and Northeast is being replaced by silence. For decades, GE symbolized American innovation and industrial strength. Now, with its decision to shutter multiple plants and move production abroad, the company has signaled a permanent shift in direction. For the thousands of workers whose livelihoods were tied to these facilities, the announcement represents more than the loss of a paycheck. It marks the unraveling of a legacy that sustained families, towns, and the American middle class for generations. These plants were not merely assembly lines. They embodied the resilience and strength of U.S. manufacturing. The steady rhythm of machines transforming raw materials into engines, turbines, and countless products carried the GE name to every corner of the world. Their closure reflects not just another corporate decision, but a turning point in global production, and a stark reminder the nation's struggle to remain competitive under current economic and political conditions. GE has made clear that this move is not temporary. Its operations are being permanently restructured toward long-term growth overseas. Production is shifting to Mexico, Eastern Europe, and Southeast Asia, regions where lower labor costs, lighter tariff burdens, and aggressive incentives from local governments create a more favorable environment. Executives stress that the strategy extends beyond simple cost-cutting. It is about creating a resilient supply chain capable of withstanding inflation, trade disputes, and geopolitical disruptions that increasingly hinder business in the United States. Beneath this decision lies a structural reality. While foreign governments aggressively court investment, America's industrial base struggles to keep pace. Rising input costs, heavy regulations, and logistical bottlenecks have steadily eroded competitiveness. For GE, relocating abroad means access to cheaper resources, more flexible labor, and modern transport hubs that make scaling production easier and more profitable. The broader trend is unmistakable. Manufacturing is no longer tied to one nation, but dispersed across global networks clustered where affordability and efficiency align. The GE's decision stands out not only for its scale, but for its symbolism. For years, companies of all sizes have gradually shifted production overseas. Yet when a corporation with more than a century of history, resources, and influence makes such a move, it sends a signal to the entire industry. If GE cannot maintain operations in America, smaller firms face an even harsher reality. The announcement has fueled fears that the erosion of domestic manufacturing could accelerate more rapidly than policymakers and communities are prepared to confront. The effect on local communities has been immediate and painful. Towns once sustained by these plants now face shrinking tax bases, vanishing jobs, and the cascading consequences that follow. Schools, hospitals, and public services once funded by industrial revenue are confronting shortages. Local governments are scrambling to offer retraining programs or lure new investment, yet the scale of the layoffs makes recovery uncertain at best. For families that relied on GE for stability across generations, the closures cut deeper than economics. They stripped away the pride of being part of something larger, a workforce that once served as a foundation of American industry. The psychological toll in many communities has been as profound as the financial one. What remains is a stark reminder of how fragile the industrial heart of the United States has become in a world where production follows the path of least resistance. General Electric was never seen as just another employer. Its name became interwoven with the story of American resilience, standing as a testament to discipline, hard work, and community pride. When factory gates close, it is not merely jobs that vanish. What disappears is a belief that industry can still thrive under the promises of leaders who champion tariffs and protectionism. The closures raised doubts about whether slogans of revival truly match the harsh realities of a global economy where cost pressures and supply chains dictate survival. This decision is not only about factories relocating, it is about knowledge and capacity moving with them. When production lines are shipped abroad, so too are technical processes, supplier contracts, and decades of accumulated expertise. What is being transferred is not only equipment, but also intellectual capital and strategic advantage. Once embedded in foreign countries, these systems strengthen competitors and weaken America's position in industries tied to national security. As a nation loses large-scale production capacity, it grows harder to remain self-sufficient in times of crisis. Within GE, this choice was not made quickly. Many plants had slowed or idled as executives spent months examining alternatives. Options included restructuring production lines, investing in robotics, cutting working hours, and renegotiating contracts with unions. Forecasts were drawn for each scenario, but none pointed to long-term profitability. Automation delivered short-term relief, and unions agreed to painful concessions, yet the soaring costs of steel, semiconductors, and shipping proved insurmountable. Tariffs intended to shield domestic producers instead raised expenses. Cutting margins until remaining in the U.S. became nearly impossible. Other solutions also failed. Relocating to states with lower taxes and looser regulations could not overcome the absence of infrastructure. Federal aid packages fell short of the scale of the challenge or came with conditions GE could not meet across its vast product portfolio. Even with creative restructuring, the math refused to align. The conclusion was unavoidable. Maintaining production in the United States meant long-term losses that threatened the survival of the company itself. For a corporation that had weathered wars, depressions, and technological revolutions, this was not a failure of innovation, but a collapse of an operating environment too hostile for manufacturing at scale. Global inflation, rising tariffs, and disrupted supply chains formed a force stronger than any one company could resist. The fallout has already reshaped communities. Families that once passed down GE jobs across generations now face unemployment. Neighborhoods where the factory whistle set the rhythm of daily life have gone quiet. Local councils convene emergency meetings but lack the resources to replace what has been lost. Across the industrial belt, abandoned parking lots and idle machines form the new landscape. Media reports show aerial footage of silent plants and empty roads. Interviews reveal the deeper scars, the loss of identity, the collapse of hope, and the fear of what comes next. The policy implications are equally dramatic. Tariffs were supposed to shield American industries, yet GE's retreat demonstrates how fragile that approach has become. The notion that patriotic duty and higher consumer costs will be enough to protect domestic manufacturing has proven naive. Without a comprehensive framework of long-term investment, training, and infrastructure support, even the strongest industrial icons cannot remain anchored at home. This is not simply a story of companies abandoning their roots, but of an economic system whose rules now extend far beyond national borders. Markets responded quickly. GE's share price wavered as analysts flagged risks in dismantling American plants, transporting equipment, and rebuilding operations overseas. Retraining new workforces and adapting to unfamiliar regulations are costly, but investors still recognize the broader logic. Long-term survival depends on aligning with globalization, even if the immediate consequences are painful. Communities see it differently. For them, survival is about livelihoods, stability, and dignity. Closures mean fewer paychecks, fewer businesses, and fewer opportunities for the next generation. They raise unsettling questions about whether the nation that wants to find industrial power can hold its ground in a world where production follows the path of lowest cost. Yet many investors look further ahead, betting that GE will eventually benefit once foreign operations are fully established. Updated models suggest the company could cut costs by nearly one-fifth through lower wages, tax benefits, and streamlined customs abroad. Global capital is already moving in similar directions, flowing to nations like Vietnam, Poland, and Mexico. GE's shift is part of a larger realignment of industrial power, one that places factories closer to growing markets while eroding America's grip on the capabilities that once defined its strength.